I stumbled upon 3 unbelievably terrifying true desert horror stories. Will you dare to listen? I never should have opened that door the moment my fingers brushed the cold, metal handle. A shiver raced down my spine. I was just another kid in the desert town of Hell's Gulch, basking in the sun, flipping through dusty old books in the library. But that day was different, the air tingled with some unseen energy. Shadows danced on the walls, long and twisted, whispering secrets I wasn't ready to hear. Outside, the relentless sun beat down on baked earth, but inside, the library felt like a tomb. Dust motes skittered through the faint light. My heart drummed in my chest. Every sound filtered whispers, the creaks of ancient wood echoed ominously, clinging to the silence. Another hour, another story, I thought. But when I opened that door, everything changed. The room beyond was dark, almost alive. A musty scent filled my nostrils, like old bones. I hesitated, half expecting the floor to give way beneath me. There it was. A strange rustle, a low moaning sound, creeping from the corners. My hands trembled as I edged inside. The shadows seemed to lean closer, as if they wanted to become one with me. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed like something heavy had fallen. It sent me reeling back, heart racing, pulse hammering in my ears. I stepped further into the darkness, curiosity battling my instinct to flee. I could hear breathing now, shallow and ragged. Was it mine? Or was something else lurking, watching? The skin on my arms prickled with fear. With every flicker of movement, I felt the cold tendrils of dread wrap tighter around me. I could see a figure, barely, just outside the edge of the faint light, arms outstretched. My breath quickened, caught in my throat like a lump of ice. Was it real? Or merely a trick of the light? Then nothing. Silence enveloped the room, thick and suffocating. The shadows retreated, leaving me in a stark void. The breathing stopped. A chill swept through the air as I dared to blink, almost afraid of what I'd discover. That's when the door slammed shut behind me. The sound reverberated, a clap of finality. My heart stopped. I was not alone anymore. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The stillness was deafening, wrapping around me like a thick veil. I turned slowly, the mounting dread clawing at my insides. The darkness felt alive, each shadow a pulsating entity scheming in silence. Panic threatened to rise, but I forced myself to breathe. There had to be a way out. I stepped cautiously away from the door, my pulse thrumming. The floorboards creaked underfoot, an agonizing reminder of my vulnerability. Ahead, the figure lingered, just outside the reach of my meager light. I squinted, trying to grasp its shape, longing for clarity while fearing it would bring only more horror. Then, it shifted an imperceptible sway that turned my insides to ice. Suddenly, a glimmer of light caught my eye, a little pocket of pale illumination spilling from an unlit corner of the room. Without thinking, I moved toward it. The air became heavier with each step, thickening like fog pressing against my chest. As I neared the light, the sound returned, a low, guttural growl that seemed to vibrate through the floorboards and up into my bones. I froze. In the corner, the light flickered, revealing a worn-out book lying open, pages fluttering as if stirred by invisible hands. It was ancient, the leather cover cracked, half hiding its secrets. An eerie warmth emanated from it, calling me closer. I reached for the book, but just as my fingers brushed against the yellowed pages, a scream echoed from nowhere, a high-pitched wail that froze my blood. It sounded familiar yet alien, like the cry of someone I once knew, somewhere deep in my past. I recoiled, a frantic urge to withdraw from the dark corners of my memory and the dread they held. Suddenly, the temperature plummeted. My breaths fogged in front of me, and the air seemed to swirl in grotesque shapes, forming specters that danced around the shadows. Whispers erupted, disjointed words slicing through the silence, swirling around me, seemingly seeking to drag me into their chaos. "Leave, you shouldn't be here." With a frantic glance back toward the door, I found that crimson imprints appeared on the wooden frame, as if stained by unseen hands clawing to get out. They pulsed, like freshly spilled blood against the pale wood, and laughter erupted behind me, rippling through the air like cold, rusted chains. I turned back to the book, desperate for answers, longing for anything that would make sense of my plight. The pages rumbled and turned violently, ink running like tears across the desolate text. I caught a fractured tale, stories of townsfolk lost to the sands, their souls intertwined with the cursed earth. Each story twisted like a thorn, pricking my curiosity while binding me in place, entranced by the horrors written in that tome. My heart dropped as I realized each name had been etched, signature to the suffering left behind. Would I find mine there? Glancing back, I felt the suffocating intent of the shadows bearing down upon me, and the laughter morphed into a din of cries. I felt like I was being pulled into a vortex of despair, the walls closing in, the whispers tight and suffocating, but just then, amid the escalating chaos, I noticed something. The figure I had seen earlier now stood in stark clarity before me, a face marred by shadow yet hauntingly familiar. I reached for the book, fingers trembling as I sought to uncover the truth of this terror, but the moment I turned the page, everything shattered, the very ground beneath me trembled violently, and a portal of darkness ripped open in the floor, tendrils of black smoke unfurling like wild serpents. The shadows laughed, a cacophony of voices echoing in my head. "Join us!" they cried, summoning me toward the abyss. My heart raced as I teetered on the brink, and in that terrifying moment of decision, I felt a cold, skeletal grip wrapping around my ankle, dragging me down, deeper into the void. Just before the darkness consumed me, I managed to scream, but the echoes of that cry were swallowed whole by the damned library. I didn't know if I would escape or if I was destined to join those who were lost, but one thing was painfully clear: I was no longer in control. The true horror was only beginning, and I could feel the entity's eyes upon me, hungry and waiting. And then, as the weight of the void closed in, a familiar voice whispered in my ear, "You've finally come home." The void swallowed me whole, and all at once, the pull ceased. Instead, I found myself falling down, into a frigid darkness that felt endless. The cold ate away at my thoughts, gnawing through my sanity, but I clung obstinately to the last vestiges of clarity. "It's just a dream," I told myself, "just a nightmare." But the sensation of falling morphed into a slow, tortured descent, like I was trapped in a free fall that had no bottom. Then, as if the air itself conspired against me, it changed. A sudden jolt sent me crashing to the ground, landing on a wave of sharp stones that sliced into my skin. I gasped, the breath knocked from me, and as I clutched my side, a shudder rattled through my frame. The terrain was rough and uneven, littered with echoes of cries that seemed to emanate from the earth itself. I pushed myself up, my pulse racing. The darkness had turned to an opaque gray, roiling like thick clouds. I was in a desolate landscape, a barren expanse that stretched endlessly. I could see twisted silhouettes in the distance, skeletal trees with branches like fingers clawing desperately at an unseen sky. A whisper floated through the air, seductive and sly. "Come, find us," it beckoned. The hairs on my arms stood on end, each step I took crunching ominously against the gravel-like ground. Unseen eyes seemed to bore into me from the obscured corners of my new surrounding, each shadow pulsing with malign energy. "Join us," the voices hissed, simultaneously coaxing and threatening. Tears brimmed in my eyes as I stumbled forward, feeling my resolve weaken, my memory a frayed thread that kept unraveling. I had to resist. My past began to twist before me like a phantom, memories blurring into a phantom chorus of familiar faces, friends and family wreathed in anguish, shadows flickering just beyond my reach. Pain washed over me like waves, an emotional tide threatening to pull me under. Then, suddenly, the earth trembled again, and the ground beneath me split open. From the fissure erupted a wave of darkness, thick and viscous, swallowing everything in its path. I pressed backward, fighting against the overwhelming odds, and landed against one of the gnarled trees that loomed to my side. Its bark was rough, but the moment my skin contacted it, a jolt of energy surged through my body, warm yet suffocated, as if the tree held a life of its own. A blinding light flashed in the distance, difficult to discern through the swirling gray haze but beckoning nonetheless. It called to me, a lifeline amidst the chaos. As I staggered toward it, the whispers grew louder, clawing at my resolve, tearing apart the thin stitches of hope I clung to. "You'll never leave. You're ours." The voices grew to a holler, echoing like the clattering of chains. Terror surged through me. I sprinted toward the light, muscles burning, throat raw from whispered warnings. It pulsed, growing brighter, a sanctuary on the horizon. Each step felt harder, as if the earth were gripping my ankles, reluctant to let me break free, but in my eagerness, I didn't see. Darting from the shadows, an entity lunged, its form shifting as if made of mere illusion and shadow. I stumbled, raising my arms to protect myself as tendrils of darkness wrapped around my wrist, slithering up my arm, freezing me in place. A voice, deep and resonant, swelled in my ears, echoing all around me. "Our chosen one, you cannot escape your destiny. The path has been laid, and you shall walk it till the end." The words crashed over me, waves against my will. The tendrils tightened, squeezing the air from my lungs, and I felt myself being dragged back, the gilded light flickering further away. No. I shouted, thrashing against the grip, and in that moment, I glimpsed a reflection, something in the darkness, something that was me yet twisted. My face contorted with fear, my eyes sunken and hollow, as if the shadows had feasted upon my very soul, and then, like thunder, a roar filled the air, crashing waves of sound that vibrated through the ground and threatened to crack my consciousness. Everything fell silent. The crushing darkness receded for a moment, and there standing before me were faces familiar, but distorted with pain and despair, rising from the shadows like ghosts. That I knew them, loved ones, friends, those who had vanished in the depths of this cursed place. Their eyes were black voids, mouth moving as if calling for help, but no sound emerged. "Help us." They mouthed in unison, and I felt my heart shatter at the sight. They reached toward me, hands outstretched as if begging for salvation, and just as I stumbled forward to grasp them, the world cracked again, the shadows shrieked, tearing everything apart. I was plunged into cold, reminding me of the first darkness I had encountered. Gripping my head in panic, I cycled through my thoughts, searching for a way, any way to escape. Then, through the chaos, I felt a presence surge behind me, heavy and merciless, and a voice slid into my mind like ice: "You will never know peace. You belong to us now." That I turned just in time to catch a glimpse of its face, a ghastly grin painted on its features, and I realized the darkness had a name. With that horrifying realization, the ground beneath me shattered once more, and I plummeted into a deeper abyss, surrounded by their cries, the haunting laughter echoing in my ears. Each scream became a tether, holding me to the depths, a binding to the darkness that promised no escape. And then nothing but silence greeted me, the unholy promise settling in, leaving me to ponder the true weight of my choices amid the shadows that suffocated all hope. Then, a flicker of light returned. But this time, it pulsed with malice, threatening to consume all I had ever known. "Come closer," it whispered, "your home has awaited you far too long." The light pulsed again, pulsating with a rhythm that seemed to synchronize with the frantic beating of my heart. "Come closer," it crooned, smooth as venom. The ground beneath me felt alive, vibrating with a grotesque hunger, as if it craved my very soul. I could see fleeting images within the light, snippets of bliss beyond the veil of despair, laughter, warmth, comfort, a world I once knew, now veiled by darkness. With every fiber of my being screaming no, I found myself stepping forward, drawn into the light's hypnotic dance. My skin tingled, a chilling caress that enveloped me. And then, in an instant, everything shifted. The warmth morphed into an overwhelming heat, unholy and suffocating, as shadows whipped back around me. The flickering light morphed into a distorted landscape of swirling shapes and forms. I was standing in an arena of chaos, glittering beneath an unforgiving sky, both light and dark intertwined in an eternal battle. The grotesque figure that haunted me lingered at the edge, obscured by horrific grins and jeering laughter. The ground quaked beneath heavy footsteps, drawing my attention away from the malevolence. From the gloom surged a creature, grotesque and towering, clad in a patchwork of twisted flesh and hollow eyes. It moved with horrifying grace, its form a distorted mockery of life, dripping with shadows that crawled along the ground like living things. Each step resonated with the agonized wails of lost souls, amplifying my dread. "You seek to escape, sweet child." It whispered, the voice smooth yet serrated, slithering through the air like smoke. But the embrace of the void is all that awaits. A gust of wind pulled at me, swirling around the creature, urging me back. I have to find them. My voice shook, threading through the noise, but the creature only laughed, a harsh, chilling sound that reverberated through the air. "Your loved ones. They are here, and yet, so far away," it crooned, stretching an impossibly long finger toward the darkness. And then, before my horrified gaze, the shadows twisted, forming familiar outlines, those I had lost, wreathed in torment, calling to me from an abyss of sorrow. "Will you save them?" The creature tempted, its grin widening like a yawning chasm. "Or will you save yourself?" Every fiber of my being churned within me. I staggered backwards, feeling my heart tighten. "No. I won't abandon them," I cried, desperation fueling my resistance. I burst forward, headlong into the void, reaching for the phantoms. But as my fingers grazed what felt like a familiar hand, the touch was solid yet exceptionally cold, a stark reality unlike anything I had known. The figure beside me, who appeared as a friend from long ago, twisted. Their head fell to the side unnaturally, their eyes blackened and full of horror. "Join us. Become one with the despair. Freedom lies within the surrender," they screamed, their voice echoing within the recesses of my mind. A sound like shattering glass rang out as they extended a hand toward me, limbs contorting grotesquely as if desperately trying to escape the binds that held them. I turned to the creature, frantic. "You did this. Release them, release." It replied, delight crackling through its voice. "They are where they belong, bound to the darkness, as you soon will be." The shadows surged, reacting as if sentient, lashing out, an arm of obsidian reaching for my heart. Panic slammed into me, and I fought against the wave, running for the horizon, a place where neither light nor dark determined the fate. I felt the warmth of my choices stirring deep within and propelled myself toward that nebulous freedom. But the creature pursued, a predator relishing its prey, its laughter bouncing off the twisted landscape, causing knots of terror to swell in my chest. "Run, sweet child. Run!" it taunted, the shadows thinner around it, yet thickening around me. Just ahead, the flickering light dimmed further as the understanding of its deception sank in. It wasn't a beacon of hope but a lie revealed, a trap to ensnare me in my own fears. In that moment, the ground opened beneath me. Again, a chasm yawning for my fall. "Join us." The voices cried out once more, now shriller with urgency, wrapping around my heart like a vice, pulling me toward the gaping maw. With one last desperate leap, I pushed forward. But as I soared to the edge of the fissure, a hand grabbed my ankle, the cold grip of despair locking me. The warmth faltered beneath me, and I screamed, plummeting into the very heart of the darkness, into oblivion. The world turned silent. Then a new sound filled the void, an echo that grew in intensity, warping my very essence. It was there, a whisper from within the darkest depths, as memories morphed again, flickering like dying flames in the encroaching dark. "You are ours now." And then, amidst the clamor of shadows, I saw them, the familiar faces once more surging from the abyss, but this time with eyes wide and pleading, mouths open in unbearable silence. "Help us," they begged once again. And in that moment, they began to dissolve, fading one by one into the abyss. In terror, I reached out, screaming, "No. Don't leave me." As their last glimmer of hope vanished, so too did the illusion of freedom. The darkness coiled tighter around me, sealing my fate, whispering secrets meant for decades of torment, surrounding me until the chance became one with the pulse of my heartbeat. Then, something shifted, new tendrils slithering closer, and the void erupted in a cacophony of sinister laughter as the shadows revealed a new horror hidden deep within their depths. Welcome, it beckoned, to everlasting night. The laughter faded to a low growl as the primal darkness thickened around me, feeding off my despair. It pulsed like a living thing, the air vibrating with its ominous presence. I felt the shadows congeal into solid forms, writhing figures closing in on me, their grotesque features illuminated briefly by flashes of that dreadful flickering light that danced like a cruel mockery of hope in the distance. That I could feel their hollow eyes piercing through the darkness, studying me, sizing me up like a feast. Nightmare-inspired expressions twisted into smiles, gleeful anticipation swirling thickly in the air. They whispered my name, a symphony of haunting voices murmuring the sweetest lies tangled with promises of deliverance from pain. They come for you, one rasped, reaching a gnarled hand toward me. You can't escape us. You must embrace it. The ground trembled under my weight, vibrating with an urgency that urged me to dive deeper into the shadowy chasm rather than fight against it. But, despite the terror, my resolve surged. I wouldn't surrender. However, the reactions of the shadows surged response. The figures surrounding me stretched closer, the chill of their entities colliding with the warmth of my living flesh. You long to save them, don't you? A voice slithered from the depths, a creeping sensation that snared my heart. Your loved ones wait, longing for your embrace. Will they perish forever in this darkness? I won't leave them. I screamed, desperation amplifying every breath. And then, a monstrous shape edged into view. It towered over the shadows, encased in a cloak of eternity, its face a distortion of familiarity and echo of those I once loved. Save me, it whispered, and I couldn't bear the agony etched in its features. Join us in the eternal embrace and feel our freedom, unbound by the anguish of existence. A cavernous howl was the answer, stronger and more compelling than the soft plea of the creature before me. Clutching desire for escape turned to dread. The faces at the edge began merging with the shadows, bone and fabric dissolving into one entity, a writhing mass of torment and longing. It's your choice, the creature murmured, tendrils of darkness curling around its form. I felt my heart race at the notion, knowing deep within me that every choice I made from this moment forward could lead to insurmountable horror or salvation. I turned to the wavering beacon of light, aware of its monstrous intentions, and the realization gripped me. It wasn't merely a danger, this was a trap, each spark promising freedom while snaring me ever tighter in its embrace. Then I heard her voice soft, like a gentle whisper on the cusp of memories. Don't surrender. Keep fighting. It was my mother, a beacon through the darkness, a reminder that I had power over my fate. For a fleeting moment, the shadows recoiled, as if repulsed by her ethereal glow that fought against the creeping abyss. Bolstered by the flicker of hope, I screamed into the void, I won't give in. My own voice resonated, fueled by anger at my own despair. Desperately, I pushed against the grasping tendrils, clawing back to where the darkness played hide-and-seek with reality. With fierce determination, I surged toward the light renewed, daring to break the cage of nightmares, but the shadows converged violently, each of them seething with rage. They screamed, a cacophonous torrent of anguish that rattled my bones. You don't belong here. They howled, and suddenly, the ground quaked violently, shuddering beneath me as though the very essence of the void demanded retribution. That I stumbled backward, the light flickering dangerously close, and in my volatile state, I felt chains of ice grip tighter around my throat, straining against my breath. You will be one of us, they hissed, and the sounds morphed into anguished laughter as though the darkness itself delighted in my struggle. And just when I thought I had broken free, one last desperate burst for the light, the ground tore open below, swallowing me whole. I fell, deeper, more profound into darkness, where time lost meaning and sound echoed endlessly, my scream resonating into nothingness. But as I fell, I glimpsed something within the pits of the void, glimmering and throbbing with another pulse of light, gleaming eyes peering back at me with malevolence and longing. It is not over yet, they whispered in unison, swirling around me, intoxicating and fierce, beckoning me deeper into the abyss. And then, with a blinding flash, I landed hard on a cold, unforgiving Cirphacea pentagram etched with symbols I couldn't comprehend, the air alive with an energy that stung my skin. In that instant, the darkness drew back, revealing figures in the flickering light of the realm, each one intricately tied to my life, their eyes filled with terror as they chanted in a language forgotten. Now, we summon you. With a bone-chilling crack, I felt the weight of the world converge upon me. The shadows erupted from the pit once more, entwining with the familiar faces I thought I had lost forever, stretching endlessly as their screams engulfed the realm of the living. They turned to me then, eyes ablaze with desolation. Welcome to our eternal night, and as I looked down, the pentagram began to glow tempting, threatening, broken images of life swirling around me in a cacophony of wails. I trembled, the boundary between life and death fracturing. There, finally unbroken by time, I saw the truth of what awaited me, vast and insatiable, ready to claim me. Then, the ground began to shake violently once more, and I realized with dawning horror it wasn't merely the darkness that craved me, but something far, far worse was about to emerge from its heart. The air crackled around me, electric with the unspeakable horrors teeming just beneath the surface. For a fleeting moment, I thought I could rise above the horror, clutch onto that thread of hope my mother offered, survive this hell, but that glimmer was dimming. The figures trapped within the pentagram surged closer, their faces twisted in anguish, mouths racing to expel the sorrows bound to their flesh. Every step they took sent vibrations through the cold earth beneath me, a reminder of the unholy pact that tethered my fate to this pentagram. Their voices melded into a single haunting entity, reverberating within my skull. "Help us!" They howled, and with every anguished plea, I felt my sanity fraying. Desperation built a wall around my heart, where before I had thought of escape and salvation, now I felt the pulling of something darker, a void that nibbled at the edges of my consciousness, beckoning me to join the suffering that encircled my existence. Somewhere deep in that swirling maelstrom of distorted cries, I spotted a flicker, one face among many that seemed more alive, sending tendrils of recognition straight to my soul. Ember, I breathed, and panic clawed at the edges of my new realization. It was my sister, caught in the web, her eyes wild, brimming with dread yet still shimmering with the spark of life. "Help me," she cried, her voice a fragile thread eroded by despair. I seized the edge of the pentagram, feeling an intoxicating pull toward the dark and the familiar merge into one. That the power of that connection was intoxicating, swelling to a crescendo that made it hard to breathe. "Sister!" I yelled, reaching out, but every inch I advanced was met with a rebuffing tide of shadows that undulated behind me, hungry for my essence. "Join us." The shadows pleaded now. "Become one with your loved ones. Embrace the everlasting night," they writhed, forming shapes so familiar, so achingly reminiscent of warmth that it broke my heart anew. The cries of the trapped souls resonated in tandem with my own heartbeat. What had I done to deserve such torment? I felt my resolve weaken, the shadows whispering sweet nothings that rippled through my core. "You will never escape," they intoned, their laughter curling around me like smoke. As I gazed into Ember's hollow eyes, the very air thickened with despair. I gasped for breath, the weight of her pain anchoring me down. "Fight it!" I screamed, sobbing into the gathering storm of shadows that swirled fiercely, straining against the barriers of life, and the crushing grip of death. Time warped, and reality shifted. I could feel the shadows beneath the pentagram pulse, feeding off the turmoil, threading through the very fabric of existence itself. Breathing became a laborious task, each inhale warning me of the impending doom that sought to consume me. Another crack rang out, echoing far and wide, and at the apex of the sound, a creature emerged from the depths, a harbinger of fear and darkness, the embodiment of death itself, with grotesque limbs unfurling from where it had been subsumed in the chaos. The looming entity had no discernible face, only a maw of twisting shadows that reached toward me, pulling at the threads of my very being. It towered above, and its presence stifled the flickers of hope still clinging to the corners of my mind, dragging them into the abyss. "Join us!" It shrieked, the ground quaking violently beneath my feet. With every shaking moment, I felt the chains of despair tightening around Ember as shrieks of mourning echoed all around the chorus of the damned, eager for another soul. My heart pounded in my chest as I turned towards Ember one last time, and her look of uncomprehending horror faced my sudden choice. "I can't let you go," I shouted, but the darkness was insatiable, already reaching for me with tentacles of cold, sinister light. The creatures behind my sister, each wearing the shadows of my family, sank deeper into the glow of the pentagram, their forms flickering like flames caught in a tempest. "No! I screamed. I can't. But they pulled me deeper, a dreadful force urging me toward the ethereal web, ripping apart every ounce of strength I once bore. My vision blurred, the shadows merging everything into a swirling vortex. You can't escape us, they crooned, weaving tales of torment and whispered sins, secrets embedded in my heart. And then, the creature's maw opened impossibly wide, terror spilling forth like a torrent, drowning the light and extinguishing the last remnants of my resolve. In that moment of pure horror, the laughter of the damned surrounded me, echoing through the dark void, enveloping me in a profound stillness. Just as I felt the sickening pull of the darkness grip me wholly, something within me snapped. I let out a primal scream, a declaration of rebellion against the ground shaking beneath me, against the echoes clawing at my soul. Tension hung heavy, the air all but crackling with excitement. I will not be part of your despair. I shouted into the heart of the void, emptiness flooding my lungs, and as if answering my defiance, the shadows recoiled, splitting wide, revealing an endless chasm where forgotten memories festered. Then come and find us, the harbinger of darkness shrieked, every creature swirling as they began to descend, their desperate cries blending into a haunting invitation, a foreboding echo fading into chaos. But just as I thought I had claimed the ground beneath me, a portal opened, tearing reality apart, and with it, my last glimpse of my sister was swallowed into the void, dragged down into the darkness. Fear seeped into my bones. What waited for me in that chasm of despair? Would I follow her, would I succumb to the shadows, or was there still a path untraveled, a truth yet unseen? As the shadows pulled tight, I felt a breath on the back of my neck, chilling my very essence. Something ancient awaited, lurking, frozen between worlds. With a shuddering breath and trembling limbs, I understood I was not alone anymore. Then the whispers broke like a flood, and a chilling realization settled in the pit of my stomach, sending icy tendrils of dread crawling up my spine. We are not finished, they sang, and before I could react, the depths opened wide and I was falling again, two figures reaching out towards me, a promise from the darkness. But what awaited me at the bottom of that abyss was beyond comprehension, a truth shrouded in shadow, and just then, the air thickened as the ground trembled with voices lost to time. My scream echoed through the void, just as darkness closed in, obscuring every path forward. The weight of the abyss crushed in around me, a smothering darkness stretching endlessly in all directions. Time felt incoherent, each fleeting moment tangling with echoes from worlds I could barely grasp. As I plummeted deeper, I saw fleeting glimpses of what lay in the shadows, hands stretched out, faces contorted in rage, grief, and unimaginable despair. They writhed like forgotten memories lost in a labyrinth of nightmares. Suddenly, I crashed onto a surface covered in a thick, viscous substance that clung to my skin, paralyzing me momentarily. My heart raced as I scrambled to my feet, gasping for breath, the air around me stifling with a damp warmth that generated an oppressive sense of urgency. I was no longer alone in this cloying confinement. Release them. A voice thundered from above, deep and resonant, breaking through the tenebrous murmurings of the shadows. I looked wildly around, where darkness coalesced into indistinct shapes and shadows that shrieked and wept. The sense of impending doom rolled over me like a suffocating fog. Before I could orient myself, the ground shook violently beneath my feet. The cries crescendoed into an unsettling lament, swirling around me relentlessly. One figure stepped forward from the gloom, contrasting sharply against the shadows, emerging like a specter from the depths of a forgotten nightmare. At first, I saw only patches of jagged limbs and hollow eyes, a silhouette that resembled both my sister and the creature that had spoken. Help us! It rasped, the plea haunting and full of power, as if it drew strength from the very essence of my memory. I could feel tears streaming down my face at the sight of familiar frustration twisted into something grotesque. Ember. I whispered, my voice trembling against the weight of the phantoms that surrounded me. Is that you? No. Not her, the creature hissed, its voice slicing through the oppressive air with malignant clarity. You're too late. She is lost. The shadowy figure snaked towards me, its fingers stretching into tendrils, seeking connection. I could feel the warmth of the familiarity, yet also an insatiable hunger that birthed an intense need to run. I couldn't embrace whatever this entity had become, not when the shadow behind it elicited that lingering whisper of lost innocence. "Why are you doing this?" I screamed, desperation clawing at my throat. The darkness reverberated around me with twisted laughter, filling the void with malevolent glee. "A sister lost is a sister found," the voice echoed. "This is a realm of choices and retribution." The shadows around me coiled tighter, pulsing with a malevolence I could not name. It was an unanswerable hunger, their twisted forms merging, creeping toward me in a serpentine fashion. "You will become one of us, whether you wail or embrace." They taunted, the sound swelling in the cavern of despair that I felt my heart racing. Instinct urged me to flee, to escape this ghastly fate. I turned, pushing through the rot and decay of the floor beneath, a tempest of dark souls reaching out, gnashing their teeth in a futile desire for liberation from their suffering. Among them, I glimpsed flickers of recognition, friends, lost loves, everyone I once knew now trapped in torment, their eyes pleading for something I could not provide. Then the ground rumbled violently, fissures opening beneath my feet. The laughter twisted into a deafening roar, shaking me to my core. "Join us!" they screamed, "join your sister!" I pressed on, dodging fingers of darkness reaching hungrily for my essence. Just as I caught a breath, the shadows exploded outward, arms of hexed memories bursting forth, pulling me downward. In that moment of paralyzing fear, one truth twisted tightly inside me was the anchor keeping Ember trapped within this netherworld of horrors. That I screamed her name, grasping for something to hold on to, but the chasm beneath was relentless, unyielding. I stumbled, clutching my head as the reality of my choices thickened the air around me. "You must choose." The shadows laughed, a symphony of anguish spiraling. My legs buckled, and as I hit the ground, visions flashed through my mind, each horrid encounter, every decision leading me here. I could feel Ember's fading flicker, a tether slowly fraying with each heartbeat. "Please, I will find you," I cried, overwhelming despair aching within my core. "Or become one of us," the creature husked, looming over me, face shifting to an eerie mimicry of my sister's features, a pulsating distortion of grief. From the depths, an unseen force began to rise, swirling in with sharp edges cloaked in lingering despair, each dormant memory clawing for release. Shadows thickened and spread, forming a whirlwind that ignited the very fabric of despair around me. And then, in an epiphany of dread, I recognized the truth buried deep within the turmoil. If I embraced this, I might free her. If I relinquished myself to the darkness, maybe, just maybe, I could pull her from its grip. But as the vortex spiraled tighter, an ember flared, igniting hope in their refusing flicker. "No!" I yelled, heart-wrenching against my resolve. The call of the dark surged with unholy rage, a cacophony of lost souls crying for salvation, drowning out my thoughts, dousing the last remnants of willpower within me. Just as the vortex threatened to consume me, a blinding light pierced through the shadows, illuminating the faces I thought forever lost. "Find us!" they screamed, their voices mingling into a terrifying chant that swirled against the dark tide, and in that heartbeat the ground split beneath me once more, opening a portal into a world unknown. With a final breath, the last flicker of ember dissolved within the abyss, just as the darkness manifested something sharper, something more terrifying than I had ever faced. As the walls of the void began to close, I was thrust back into the maelstrom, a darkness wrapped around me tighter than ever, as I was hurled into chaos with only one haunting thought clinging fiercely to my mind: what truth awaited me on the other side? The darkness laughed with morbid delight, and as I fell forward into the maw of the unknown, all I could think was that the answer lay somewhere beneath. Falling felt eternal, an unyielding descent through shadows that morphed and twisted, gasping for breath as horror enveloped me. The sensation was claustrophobic, like a vice slowly crushing my spirit, making each heartbeat feel like the last. Just as I thought the plunge would never end, a sudden jolt yanked me into a new realm, still rooted in darkness but oh so different. That I landed, not on viscous ground, but on dry, cracked earth dust swirling upwards, choked with the scent of decay. I blinked against the blinding white sun overhead, disorientated, the shadows receding, only to be replaced by a haunting silence. In the distance, a shimmer caught my eye, a mirage, perhaps, but no, it was something much more sinister. A figure stood alone, silhouetted against the scorched landscape that I staggered towards it, each step sending ripples of unease thrumming through my bones. It wasn't merely the heat that cloaked me, there was a presence here, palpable and oppressive, as if the very air tasted of forgotten screams. The figure remained motionless, its contours shifting uneasily, a semblance of a person yet distorted, as if the essence of humanity twisted with torment. "Help me," it croaked, voice tainted with a rasping desperation that dug under my skin. "Please, help us." Suddenly, figures erupted from behind the first, appearing as if they had materialized from the dry dust itself. Their skin was mottled and cracked, faces contorted into expressions of despair or rage, a macabre symphony of the damned. "We are lost!" they cried in unison, a chilling harmony that sent shivers cascading down my spine. "We were like you once," a deep sense of recognition tugged at my memories, faces flickering through time and space, another haunting disorientation. Who were these people? Had I known them? But the more I looked, the more they dissolved into indistinct shapes, their features blurring the lines of recognition as dread wormed its way into my heart. From behind the throng, the leading figure stepped forward, its form shifting like mirage-made flesh. "You brought us here," it accused with a voice that clawed through the silence like nails against stone. "You condemned us to this place. But there's a way back for you. Relinquish yourself." "No. I didn't," I stammered, hands raised in protest, heart pounding furiously as their accusations wrapped around me like chains. Shadows flicked at the edges of my vision, talons made from the darkest fears inching closer. I turned to run, the figure's voice pursued me. "You cannot escape your bond. It is you who leads us." My feet carried me across the desolate landscape, each hollow step echoing against the expansive emptiness, a cruel reminder of my desperation. An unnatural wind swirled up from behind me, an ethereal whisper grazing my neck like the kiss of death, urging me to turn, to face the reckoning. "Ember!" I screamed into the vacuous void, lost voices murmuring in weary echoes around me. "I'm coming!" An unbearable longing for her presence scrabbled at my heart. So close, yet so distant, gripped in shadows that mirrored my torment. Suddenly, a cacophony erupted around me, voices swirling into a vortex of chaos. "Give in," they raved, each shriek more maddening than the last, "join us." The earth trembled beneath my feet as memories thickened the air with sorrow and regret, visions crashing towards me like waves of darkness. Faces emerged through the cacophony, once familiar, now ravaged by despair, a timeline of friends, lovers, each with eyes wide in agony, mouths agape in deafening wails of anguish. And then I saw her, Ember, her features much like the distorted creature I faced before, but flickering like a flame in a tempest. A surge of hope and anguish swept over me, pulling me into its embrace. "Don't give in," she cried, though her voice was wrapped in layers of distortion. "You have a choice. Remember who you are." But the throng surged closer, gnashing for my essence, pulling me deeper into their collective sorrow. "We will show you the truth," they howled, each word thick with malice, yet laced with a twisted promise. The promise of the past, of healing, of finding Ember if only I yielded to their will. The distorted figure from before reared again, a nightmare made flesh, seizing hold of my shoulders, its grip like ice. "You belong to us now. You've been called to fulfill the cycle." I fought against the crushing tide, the ground beneath me trembling as if alive. Memories surged piercingly, an ember flaring within the choking abyss that whispered of salvation. "You are the key," it urged, pulling at my core, a glimmer of warmth igniting against the chill creeping in, but as I clawed desperately against the tide of lurking shadows, visions of Ember flickered and dimmed. "Keep running," she cried, her eyes pleading with an intensity that broke through the madness. "They will devour you. Choose life. Theirs is the choice." The figure screamed, malicious delight twisting its features into a horrid visage of glee. In that petrifying moment, the shadows surged forward, grasping, seizing, threatening to envelop me whole as dread intermingled with the phantoms of my past. I could feel my willpower tearing at the seams, the call of the void growing unbearable. closing around me like a coffin, and with one last gasping breath, the world disintegrated, the ground crumbling beneath my feet, a chasm opening wide, revealing something feral, something that promised to consume all light. In that darkness, I glimpsed what I feared most, a truth unrecognized, an echo longing to be set free. Just as I was drawn to the verge, the very essence of despair clawing at my throat, a chilling laughter erupted from the shadow, a sound both familiar and foreign, a dissonance of reality, choose, or be lost forever. With those final words hanging in the air, mocking and grotesque, I felt myself teetering on the brink of oblivion, a whisper of Ember's voice barely breaking through as the void threatened to claim me. "Find me," she uttered, fading like a distant star, and the darkness grinned, reveling in my plight, the clamor of lost souls swirling ever louder, a cacophony echoing the truth I dared not confront. I plunged deeper, but as I fell, I felt something warm and solid grip my arm, pulling me back from the brink, where the shadows waited with bated breath. As reality twisted once more, something shifted in the depths, something unfathomable, something that bared its teeth at me. And I realized with terror that I was drowning in the choices unmade, even as the abyss whispered my name. The world snapped back into focus, jagged and splintered, as if I had been pulled from one nightmare only to be thrust into another. I gasped, pulling air into my lungs, but the breath felt thick, saturated with an inexplicable dread. My surroundings shifted subtly, the dry, cracked earth had morphed into a landscape of twisted foliage, each plant giving the impression of having been grotesquely clawed at, gnarled branches reaching like skeletal hands. Where am I? The question escaped my lips as I took a tentative step forward. The air felt heavy, and the cloying sweetness of decay hung like a shroud around me, enveloping my very being. Each footfall sank slightly into the ground, as if the earth itself was alive and hungry. A low, guttural growl rippled through the silence, vibrant and menacing, causing my heart to race relentlessly against my ribcage. And just like that, the shadows grew denser, silhouettes dancing erratically among the trees, waiting, watching with eyes that flickered with spectral light. My instinct screamed for me to flee, but I was paralyzed, every nerve ending alive with terror, as if the fabric of the very world conspired to root me in place. In the distance, I could make out a figure at the far edge of the grove, a child, alone and forlorn, with fairy-like wings that glimmered under the overhead sun, but even the light couldn't mask the pallor of death cast over her complexion. "Help me," she wavered, voice sweet yet laced with sorrow, as if she had known despair's darkest corners. "They won't let me go." "Who? What do you mean?" I croaked, stepping closer despite the heavy tendrils of unease curling around me. The child was impossibly still, her eyes wide like two empty voids reflecting back my own horror. "They come for you," the girl whispered, her smile brittle and cold. "They want you to acknowledge you belong to them now." In that instant, a shudder coursed through the ground, a tremor echoing up through my legs, an indication that something ancient and merciless lay buried beneath, waiting, calculating. I turned, expecting to see the figures from before, the lost souls commanding my will, but only silence and shadows met my gaze. "There's no escape," the child repeated, a fascination with fear glimmering in her inhuman depths. "They love to play with their food." A chill crept down my spine as the laughter of children, soft and mischievous, rose up from the shadows surrounding her, weaving through the mist that swirled at our feet. Their giggles morphed into a cacophony of taunts, echoing off the twisted trees, drowning me in a suffocating chaos. "Join us." They chanted, the words sharp and insistent, twisting the very atmosphere around us. A sudden fracas erupted within the underbrush, and from the thicket emerged not just shadows but grotesque forms, figures that slithered and crept, each guttural breath mingling with the child's laughter, like an unseen orchestra conducting its symphony of madness. Compelled to run, I spun, desperately scanning the trees for any path of escape, but found myself cornered by the conglomeration of wraiths and phantoms that spilled forth like ink pooling on paper, their features twisting into the semblances of those I had long lost, friends, family, conflated into a wretched congregation, each face twisted into expressions of torment and glee. "Remember us?" they hissed, their voices a chorus of sorrow mixed with mocking joy, as they reached out for me, claws outstretched, a grotesque imitation of reaching hands. "You're one of us now," something deep within me ignited, the remnants of a fight breaking free from the coils of desperation. "No!" I shouted, my voice cutting through the taunts. "You're not real. I won't let you take me." The child's laughter morphed into something more sinister, and she floated just above the ground, her wings fluttering like wisps of smoke caught in a gale. "You think you can resist? This is just your first game. Come play with us." A desolate howl erupted from deep within the shadows, and suddenly, tears of despair streamed down my face, coating the richness of my fear. I stumbled backward, aware of the source of that sound, a creature, brutish and tilted, emerging from its lair among the shadows, leathery and pitiless, summoning even more of its kin into this malevolent dance. I wheeled around again, searching for a means of escape, but the figures pressed ever closer, the bloodied remnants of their past lives twisted in a dark tapestry that threatened to consume me. They closed in like a tightening noose, their eyes aflame with hunger. "Choose." They screamed in concert, the chorus of tortured souls crescendoing around me. "Join us, or be lost." Driven by primal fear, I bolted, tearing through the skeletal branches, desperate for the outside world, desperately afraid to confront the truth they so viciously craved. But as I plunged deeper into the abyss, hearts beating erratically in a ballet of initiation, I heard the sinister laughter behind me swell once more, resonating in my very bones, mocking my struggle, and then I tripped, sprawling onto the ground as the world melted around me. I hit the cold earth hard, the pain reverberating through my body, but it was nothing compared to the horror rising before my eyes. A maw of darkness opened wide, a tangible void that clawed at the edges of reality, the laughter of lost children echoing eerily as shadows entwined with the darkness. "Come choose," they beckoned, the air thickening with dread. "Join the eternal play forever." In that moment, I saw Ember's face flash within the swirling chaos, a beacon piercing the shadow, and suddenly, the maw consumed her image, and a magnitude of despair rushed over me, pulling me into the very heart of the emptiness that threatened to obliterate all I knew. That I desperately reached for something, anything, in that terrifying moment when the shadow engulfed me and a sinister whisper breathed into my ear, "Your choice is now." And then everything exploded into nothingness. I awakened on the cracked concrete of the library floor, the sun streaming through the dusty windows like a piercing sword. Heart pounding, I bolted upright, the remnants of nightmare clinging to me like a shroud. The room was empty. Silence loomed where shadows once danced, a stark contrast to the tormenting echoes that still lingered in my mind. I gasped for air, trying to orient myself, fighting the weight pressing down on my chest as I processed the inexplicable dissonance between my experiences and the actual world around me. Had it all been a dream? Or had I truly traversed that hellish realm, where nightmares coiled within shadows and whispers promised salvation? I could still feel the warmth of Ember's fading anguish, the agony of loss clawing at my insides. "Get up," I muttered to myself, forcing my limbs to respond. "You're safe now," but deep down, a disquieting feeling settled like ice in the pit of my stomach. No, I wasn't safe. The shadows I encountered still lurked beyond the door, ready to take root again at the slightest crack, waiting patiently to reclaim what they believed belonged to them. That I stumbled to my feet, shaking off the remnants of despair, and made my way toward the door, each step heavier than the last. A shiver raced down my spine as my fingers brushed the cold metal handle again, the same handle that had ushered in a torrent of agony. Was it worth the risk? As the uncertainty clawed its way back into my heart, I had to know. I had to confront the truth. That I pushed open the door, and the dim corridor enveloped me. Everything felt eerily familiar, the air thick with anticipation. As I made my way through the winding halls of the library, whispers floated in the air, gentle yet insidious, wrapping around my thoughts like a vine, beckoning me back into their fold. "Join us, find us," they sang, a haunting melody that vibrated through the very core of my being. That I shook my head, clasping my hands over my ears to escape their insistent taunts, but deep within, I knew, they were still there, waiting for me to succumb to their relentless calls. I had hoped that facing my fears would help free me, but perhaps the truth was more sinister. Maybe they didn't want me to escape. Without warning, I turned and ran. The shadows danced in the corners of my vision, flickering like ghosts trailing close behind. I sprinted through the library's corridors, the echoes of my hasty footsteps reverberating ominously against the walls. I reached the entrance, the large wooden doors looming, and flung them open, a taste of freedom bursting as the sunlight pierced through the threshold. but as I stepped outside, the world shifted. The sun hung high in the clear blue sky, but shadows cast by unseen figures stretched toward me, long, curling fingers aching for my essence. My heart sank, and I turned back toward the sanctuary of the library, only to find the doorway had vanished, leaving an impenetrable wall of darkness where it once stood. That I was trapped, caught in the eternal play of light and shadow, a pawn in a game I never agreed to join. The laughter crescendoed, mocking me, wrapping me in a cocoon of fear as I stumbled backward into the open arms of the encroaching void. "You belong to us now." It echoed, deep and throaty, a horrifying truth rising within the laughter. Despair filled every crevice of my mind, and in that moment, clarity washed over me like a tide. I was not free. The horrors that had taunted Methy were waiting, patiently lurking in the darkness I had failed to truly escape. They were not mere wisps of shadows but the manifestations of something ancient and malignant. The very essence of fear had stitched me into their fabric, my fate bound to theirs. No. I screamed, full of rebellion, anger boiling within me as the reality of my plight gripped my heart. I staggered forward, desperate to break free, but the shadows surged, glomming onto my body like leeches drawn to a wound, siphoning away what little resolve remained, and then with a final haunting frame, the shadows surrounding me formed into familiar face me family, my friends twisted in anguish. Their mouths moved in an endless chant, echoing in perfect harmony, beckoning me deeper. "Help us," they cried, their voice a chilling lament, a melody of despair that called to my soul. In that moment of agonizing clarity, I understood I could never escape their hold. I had become entwined in their web, cursed to envelop myself in the shadows every time I thought I could break free. I was forever bound. Among the faces eviscerated by chaos, one emerged without distortion, a face I longed to grasp, Ember, eyes filled with pleading sorrow. "Find us," she whispered, a plea that lanced through the madness wrapping around my mind. "Find yourself." As I felt my power draining away, panic surged through me like molten fire. I could feel the pull of the abyss encroaching around me, threatening to engulf every fragment of my essence. In one desperate attempt, I reached for Ember, threads of hope sparking anew, fierce and unyielding, but all that grasped me were hands of darkness and inevitability, shadows coalescing into one crushing entity. "We are you," they cried, the cacophony rising to a fever pitch as I felt myself slipping away. I fought back, rage fueling my soul with a spark of defiance, but it didn't matter. As the darkness enveloped me completely, the last sliver of sunlight flickering out, a haunting realization descended. I had fought the shadows, but in every way that mattered, I had become one with them. And then, as the weight of my choices consumed me, I heard Ember's voice one last time, ethereal and echoing, reverberating against the void, "You're home." And it felt like the end, the conclusion of an unending cycle, a dance with shadows that would never cease, forever lingering in the spaces between light and darkness.